Community is the new Google and the new ChatGPT. For a very long time, people were going to search engines to ask questions. And now either they go to an LLM or they go into a community.
You've won these awards, one of the top 50 B2B marketing influencers. You've achieved amazing revenue goals for companies.
Pavilion is the world's largest private community for go-to-market executives in B2B tech.
How has someone leveraged your platform and community with sponsorship really well?
We actually have one published on our website from a company called Carabiner Group, which has since been acquired by SBI, the growth advisory firm. Their head of sales and their founder both became members, answered as many questions as he could, made as many introductions, went to as many events, and became almost ubiquitous.
If a B2B company getting from $100,000 to maybe $2 million, what would be your starting point?
Number one is I strongly encourage the founder and any other senior executives within the company to build their personal brands. Then number two, I think...
Hey, Kathleen, welcome to Edbound with Kenner. Such an honor to have you with us today.
Hi, Kenner. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Now, I know that you've achieved so much. You've won these awards, one of the top 50 B2B marketing influencers on the internet. You've, kind of achieved amazing revenue goals for companies and grown so many brands. How do you usually introduce yourself when you are in a room with potential customers, investors, in a formal setting?
Oh boy, I tend to keep it pretty simple. I just generally say I lead marketing at Pavilion, which is the world's largest private community for go-to-market executives in B2B tech. And I have a background as an owner and an entrepreneur, but now I've really devoted my career to leading marketing at early and growth stage tech companies.
Superb. Now, you have a specific playbook and method that you usually talk about on your LinkedIn. And I know you have this amazing following. I love the posts that you put on. Let's just start with the basics. Now, if a B2B company, let's say, getting from $100,000 to maybe the first $2 million, what would be your starting point for somebody like that? Like a company, if you were mentoring them, guiding them, how would you like to start?
Yeah, I think my answer to this honestly has changed a lot over the last few years because of what's happened with AI and the impact that it's had on search and discoverability, et cetera. And so today, if I were working with a very small company, I think understanding that they would have, limited resources, there's a couple things I would do. Number one is I would strongly encourage the founder and any other senior executives within the company to build their personal brands and to do it by, posting regularly to a platform where their customers spend time. And in, the cases of the companies I've worked with, that's generally been LinkedIn, although I did work in e-commerce for a while. And so Twitter was one place I have also explored. But I think it's about establishing your credibility and building trust in the places where your customers are spending their time or your prospective customers. So I think that's number one. And that's not about being, promotional about the company. It's about establishing your authority and your expertise within your industry. Then number two, I think I would map who has influence with the audience you're trying to reach, because there are, obviously opportunities with search engine optimization, generative engine optimization, ads, things, a lot of the traditional channels we think about. But I think there's a few challenges with those. One, the landscape is shifting so rapidly because of AI. Two, the competition to stand out in those channels is so much stronger because of AI. And three, attribution is getting much more difficult because of AI. So understanding all of that, I think those are all very valid channels in general for marketers. But again, if the question's really where would I focus at a very early stage, I would actually do an end around of all of that and use a shortcut, which is essentially build like an influencer strategy. And I would find the people that my audience is already listening to or watching or reading or paying attention to, and I would try and partner with them, whether that is through a formal influencer relationship or content collaborations or starting a podcast kind of like you've done and having these people on. I think there's a variety of ways to tackle it, but I do think that the fastest and least expensive way to build trust with your audience is to leverage the halo effect of those who've already done it. So those would be two plays I would start with.
Yes, I mean, so many golden nuggets there. I love what you're saying about the personal brand. When I look at Pavilion and the growth that you've kind of been able to achieve, I think the numbers publicly available are about 10,000 plus members worldwide. Was this part of the playbook that you used there as well? Like, I know that you use your personal brand, but is that the main center point for that growth?
Yeah, I'm so fortunate at Pavilion because prior to joining Pavilion, I had spent a lot of time in my career trying to convince CEOs and my fellow ELT members at various companies that they should leverage LinkedIn, and to no avail. And in fact, I would say this to marketers, that if an executive is not already convinced that that's a strategy they should pursue, it's going to be pretty hard to get them to do it. Like, they have to inherently believe in it and want to do it. So I was really lucky when it came to Pavilion because our CEO, Sam Jacobs, was already a big believer in this strategy. He was already doing it and committed to doing it consistently. And it has driven a tremendous amount of interest in the community. So I'm really fortunate about that. And I do it too, but I don't even do it as well as he does. And I'm a marketer. So that should say a lot about his dedication and to it and belief in it. So we absolutely have used that strategy, and it has really helped drive awareness for our brand. In terms of the influencer strategy, I think this can manifest in different ways. We try and leverage our members. There's different kinds of influence. And so for us, one form of it is word of mouth. Throughout our history, one of our biggest growth drivers has been happy members telling other people and them becoming happy members. And so it is a form of influence that is very powerful, perhaps a little bit more challenging to drive at scale, but I think we've been pretty good at driving a word of mouth engine. And then lastly, I would say that we, after I joined, one of the things we focused on a lot is a strategy that I believe strongly in. Again, a form of influence, which is you make your customer the hero. And so we have all these members, and what we set out to do is to shine the spotlight on them. So over the last several years, we've done a series where we spotlight different executives to watch, and we publish lists featuring people. We highlight member stories on our LinkedIn and in our content and in all kinds of different formats. But I think that's a theme, a through line that runs through all of it, is it's not about us, it's about them and their experiences. And if we can help the people that are already using Pavilion to tell their stories, then that's going to be the most persuasive form of marketing we have in our tool set.
That's a fantastic idea. So you publish these lists quarterly, 6 months, or a year? Like, how often?
Well, we publish a number of lists. So we have like CXOs, we have CMOs to watch, CROs to watch, CCOs. It goes on and on. So we publish, each one of those lists gets published once a year, but there are probably 6 lists that get published over the course of the year, each focusing on a different role.
Well, that's a brilliant idea. And anyone who's not on Pavilion could also be a part of that list, or they have to be a part of the community and then they qualify?
No, we actually will feature non-members as well. And I mean, the truth is, while it's a great marketing strategy, we also really believe in elevating people doing great work. It's part of our mission. And so it's important to us to not have it be like a pay to play thing. So we highlight people, whether they're members or not. We make a really concerted effort to make sure our lists are diverse and represent the full, breadth of person who operates in these roles. So I'm pretty proud of the list we've put together over the years. And they include, what's also great is they include some very well-known names, as well as a lot of names people may not have heard before. And so we're really trying to elevate the people who are doing great work, regardless of how many, LinkedIn followers they might have already.
Hmm. And being a non-media company, I mean, usually lists have been a proprietary method of, media companies to kind of monetize or leverage their brands or, shine a spotlight on someone. How difficult it is for this strategy to be implemented by someone. I mean, particularly you guys. I mean, you're not like a magazine or a Inc. 42 or, like a Fortune. So what's the playbook there? I just want to understand how tough was it to get a good recognition for these lists?
So it's funny you say that about media companies, because we actually are in the process of building a media company called Topline, where we are really going to be almost spinning off our media brand that we've been building into a true media property. That is a work in progress. But to your question, I think this is why being a community business has really worked to our advantage. We have a built-in audience that's quite large because we're not a software vendor. You know what I mean? We're agnostic within the industry. And so people do tend to listen to what we have to say about these things. We have our corporate LinkedIn account has a following of 130,000 people. Our CEO's
That's
following is
quite a
probably
lot.
just as large. And then we have a public facing newsletter that goes to over 100,000 people as well. So we have a big audience. And then I think the other aspect of getting this list recognition is leveraging the promotional power of the people on the list. So we really, try to empower the people we feature with the assets and information they need to promote their own inclusion, because it should be a badge of honor, and we want people to brag about it. And so we help them do that.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought, and I think possibly someone else also spotted that, because with lists I'd seen this. You need a media outfit to leverage it completely, but I get it. Now you quoted another fantastic term. You said word of mouth engine. You said that you leverage it really well. Uh, I would like to kind of drill down a little bit more into that and understand, how do you define a word of mouth engine? Because, in the old world, it's just like people are talking about the good things that you're doing. But I think today you really need to build an engine or nobody is going to talk about you. So how does that look?
Yeah, I mean, the concept of word of mouth is as old as time. It's as old as, culture, humanity, community, etc. It's people talking to other people and sharing their lived experiences. And I think in today's world, the essence of word of mouth is still the same. It's hearing from another human being what their experience has been, and because you get that story and the person, you trust the information more. I think what makes it modern, what makes it an engine, is how you operationalize it and how you scale it. And so what we've thought a lot about is how to tap into moments of meaning that our members experience and present them with really frictionless opportunities to share that. And so there's a few ways that we do that. One is when someone first joins Pavilion, there's a lot of pride and excitement that they experience in that moment. And so as part of their onboarding, we encourage them to list their Pavilion membership as a job on LinkedIn. It's a pride thing for our members. People feel that participation in Pavilion is a badge of honor. So they want to share that with their network. And at the same time, by putting that on LinkedIn, it surfaces the fact that they've joined Pavilion to their entire network. And so that's like an example of, you need to understand the journey that somebody's going through, understand those moments or those inflection points where they're getting value, and then tap into that. And another might be they've just attended an event, or a great example is they've just taken a course. So we're renowned for our Chief Revenue Officer school. And when people finish that course, they take a test and they get a certificate. And we issue the certificate and encourage them to share that on LinkedIn. And so word of mouth isn't just saying, hey, you should join Pavilion. it's subtler than that. It's saying, here's my experience in Pavilion and what I'm so excited about. It could be that I joined. It could be that I got this new CRO school certificate. And those are all subtle signals that like there's value there. Somebody's really proud of what they've done, and maybe I should look into it too.
Hmm. Now, you often talk about on the same lines about community being the new Google. Um, you kind of talk about that it's changing, especially for B2B. So how have you been able to operationalize that thought, and what does it essentially means for someone listening to us? How could they kind of think in the same way?
I should probably amend my statement and change it to community is the new Google and the new ChatGPT. Um, I think that the whole idea of search engines is discoverability, right? It's like how people find their information. And I think for a very long time, people were going to search engines to ask questions to solve problems. And now when people have questions and want to solve problems, there are easier and better ways to do it. Either they go to an LLM or they go into a community. And I see it every single day in Pavilion where people will go into the community and say something like, hey, I'm going to be purchasing sales call recording software. What are you using? What do you recommend? Or even going so far as to say, I'm looking at these few vendors. What has your experience been? So there's like a top of funnel opportunity where they say, this is a problem I want to solve. I need to record my team sales calls. What do you recommend? That's very top of the funnel. And in that case, somebody's getting the names of a few companies and the behavior changes, right? Like when you go to Google and you search, you're searching a broad term and then it is leading you to websites. Versus now, if you go to community and you say, I have this broad problem, and somebody shares the names of a few companies, it's going to lead you to websites, but you're only going to
Oh,
get there.
absolutely.
What's that?
There's far more trust. There's far
Oh,
more
so much
trust
more.
there.
And you're only going to go to those. By the time you get to Google in this new world, you're not doing a broad search. You're typing in the name of a company. So as a company, if you want to get found in this new community-led world, it's more than SEO, right? It's like brand. You need to be
Yeah.
mentioned in those conversations.
Wow, that's powerful. As Pavilion, how do you monetize these communities, and I mean, the second layer of this question, we've had through our platform a very large, like a $500 million company, build a community and do their first 100 customer acquisition in the GCC region using our tech, right, which is community and education. Now, these guys used a playbook, um, and they did not. In fact, these guys partly monetized the membership community itself, and then they were also selling their own software on top of it. So, what's your playbook and suggestion to a B2B company? How could they use this playbook? Like, build a community? Should they monetize it? How do they convert it into bottom funnel or like a conversion?
I don't necessarily recommend that everybody build their own community. I think that's it can feel like a really easy solution, but it's so much more complicated than it appears on the surface. And it's really a very long-term play that can be really resource intensive. And I've done it before Pavilion as well. When I was at a company called Impact, we had a 5,000 member marketing community. But in both of those cases, the companies were willing to dedicate substantial resources to the communities. They were willing to like wait quite some time to see returns from it. And in some cases, like I would say, not even necessarily see direct returns. They just knew inherently that it was the smart thing to do. When I talk about community with people, I focus much more on like, what is it you're really trying to achieve, and how soon do you need to achieve it, and what's your budget, right? Because there are other ways to leverage community for growth. One of those is to just join communities and be a member and participate and organically build the kind of trust and relationships that lead to this sort of engagement and ROI that we're talking about. And I think there's a lot of people that have done that very, very successfully. They're the ones who really lean in, and like, as trite as it sounds, the truth is with community, you very much get out of it what you put into it. You be a passive lurker and expect to see ROI from community participation. The second is to sponsor an existing community. And this might sound self-serving, but like, it's true. You have communities out there like Pavilion that have built the audiences, that have the events, that are investing in creating, local chapters and courses and programming. You can either try to recreate that all on your own, like I said, which is very expensive, or you can pay a community, whether it's Pavilion or somebody else, and establish a brand presence for yourself and like draft off of the trust that community has built. So we see companies do it all three ways and combine those three ways. So participate as members, sponsor, or start their own. All of those are very valid for different reasons, for over different time horizons and with differing levels of investment. And I think commonly you see probably a combination of the first two is the most common, like people joining and also sponsoring if they really believe in community as a channel. It's also a great way to test whether that model is going to work for you before you try and go and create your own community.
Well, that's really sound advice. I have a follow-on question to your suggestion. Now, you mentioned about participating in a community that already exists, and your target audience kind of is talking there. I have faced a lot of problem around being able to insert shameless plugs. Like you and people say it, right? They start something by saying, okay, here is a shameless plug. Somebody asked about a CRM, I run a CRM. Somebody asked about a website building service, I run one. What have you seen has worked for some smart members in your communities? I mean, I'm sure you have so many anecdotes and cases. Now, I'm super keen to understand, how could you leverage a community being a member?
It's so funny that you asked that, because I do think if it's not done well, it's kind of like starting a sentence with,
Yeah.
I don't mean to offend you, but, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm going to offend you, but I'm just telling you in advance. No, I do think that there are good ways to do this. I think it has to start with you. If you're coming into a community to try and build ROI, first of all, if that's your number one purpose, you're probably not going to succeed. Like, you really do need to be there first and foremost to build relationships and be helpful. An outcome of that is going to be ROI. That being said, I think number one, it's like, go in, be active, be helpful, answer questions, make introductions, like put in that upfront investment. It's sort of like on LinkedIn. If you're trying to get value out of a connection, the best way to start is by like following that person, commenting on their posts, engaging with them in an authentic way, not by connecting with them and then immediately sending them a pitch in their DMs. Like, that does not work. It's the same thing in community. So start by adding value. Then I think you do need to kind of like wait. And you need to wait for a question to be asked. So somebody says, to your point, like, I'm looking for XYZ type of solution or recommendations for this type of solution. I think it's perfectly okay to say, hey, that just happens to be what I do. But what I would do is, instead of like DMing that person and saying, here's my meeting link, let's set up a time for a demo, I would respond and say, that happens to be what I do. If you're interested in learning more, shoot me a DM. That kind of thing. It's a very soft approach. The other way that this works is if somebody else recommends you, which is even better. And that is why it is important to start by adding value, because what I've seen be the most effective is when somebody asks the question, and before you even have a chance to chime in, five other people say, you need to talk to this person because they're the expert. And the reason they say that is that that person has added value in the community. And I'm going to throw in a little like sort of wrench to this, which I think is super interesting. And it's something we're thinking more deeply about. Soon this will work even more like search engines than you think, which is that, like, Pavilion's a great example. We're beginning to add in an AI overlay to the community where you're going to be able to say, hey, Pavilion AI bot, who are the top community-led growth experts mentioned within Pavilion's Slack? And the AI is going to go back and look and see who other members have mentioned when this question gets asked. So that is why, like, building your personal brand as an expert and as a helpful resource and fellow member of the community is going to be so, so important. It is a new type of like, let's call it community engine optimization, if you will. CEO, there you go. I'm coining a new acronym.
Oh, yes.
As opposed to SEO. I think that's going to be a really emerging field, and it, you can't fake it, right? It all has to start with genuine helpfulness and expertise.
I love that. CEO, Community
You heard it here
Engine
first. I
Optimization.
just made it up.
Yes, you made us a part of history too. We're going to announce it that you created this here.
There you go. It all started here.
Yes. Now, the second part of it, you suggested if you are becoming a part of the community, I think, and these are fantastic ideas. Let me tell you, I have struggled with some of these. Like, I know somebody is asking what I could solve, but you just don't want to be in the face. And there have been times when others have recommended that, okay, possibly this platform or this person could solve it. So I think some of the ideas that you gave, they're fantastic. Like they would work. Like I can see myself saying those things. And it makes sense. Second part of it, when you've seen somebody really leveraging Pavilion, so the first idea was you become a part of a community. Second, sponsoring a community, or leveraging a community that's already growing and has your target audience. So how has someone, if you want to name a company, or it's okay, you could kind of use a fictional name, but somebody who could leverage or who did leverage your platform and community with sponsorship really well, how does that case study look like?
We actually have one published on our website from a company called Carabiner Group, which has since been acquired by SBI, the growth advisory firm. And I think they're a great case study because what they did is they joined as members. The people from the company did. They were a small RevOps consultancy when they joined, very small startup. And their head of sales and their founder both became members. And the head of sales set out on a mission to be the most helpful person in the community. And so he answered as many questions as he could. He made as many introductions as possible. He went to as many events as he could attend and became almost ubiquitous. Like, I think there was one point where we actually did formally measure, and he was the number one most active Slack contributor within all of Pavilion. And then they began to layer on sponsorship, and they sponsored our salon dinners. And their CEO he flew and went to as many of them as he possibly could and was in person and built relationships. And between the two of them, they really kind of cornered the market, and they became known as the top experts in revenue operations within the community, so that anytime somebody asked a question around who you should talk to for revenue operations, their name was mentioned, and they did not have to mention it themselves because they had built the trust, they had built the relationships, they had shown up and participated and been helpful. And there was a point, I think in our case study, we talk about how at one point 70% of their pipeline came from communities like Pavilion, and a big part of that was Pavilion. And they can track it because they're in RevOps. So they had this amazing way of being able to like really prove it. And since then, as I said, now they've been acquired. And so it's really, I think, a full circle success story that they saw early on the power of community, and they weren't a huge company with deep pockets. And so they saw like, we don't need a giant budget to do this. Like, this is the future. What we need is consistency and time and participation. And those are things that are available to any company, large or small.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit more about Pavilion. A lot of people listening to us are B2B founders or people in RevOps or marketing. What's the best way to leverage Pavilion? Is it going to be... would you recommend only like a paid membership, attending a few programs? Now, let's hear about leveraging Pavilion, the second use case that you just spoke about.
Yeah, we actually have data to back this up. So we have run regression analysis on what our happiest, most satisfied members do. And the data is very, very clear. Number one, they are active participants in our private Slack community. They post regularly. They are dedicated to a small handful of channels where they participate meaningfully. And that's generally like their functional channel. So I'm a marketer. In my case, it would be our CMO channel, my local chapter, which in my case happens to be Washington, D.C., and then one or two, interest-based channels. Like, for example, our AI and go-to-market channel is very popular. I'm also passionate about our women in Pavilion channel. So we generally say like pick 3 to 4 channels and really lean in. That's number one. Number two is they take a couple of courses. We generally recommend our flagship schools. So again, like for me, it would be Chief Marketing Officer School. And then there are others. Right now, I'm taking the AI-powered go-to-market organization course, which has been amazing. So
Are
one
these
is...
paid?
What's
Are these
that?
paid courses?
The courses are included in membership. So
And what does the membership cost?
For executives, well, it depends on where you live in the world. But in the US, if you're a North American executive, it is $2,700 a year. And all of our pricing is on our website. And you can pay annually or quarterly. So happiest members participate in Slack, they take courses, and then they attend one or more events. And that could be a local chapter event. We have 50 chapters around the world, or it might be one of our conferences or summits. And we have our Go-to-Market 2025, like our flagship conference is coming up September 23rd through the 25th in Washington, D.C. So very simple 3-step formula: participate in Slack, take courses, go to an event.
Wow, no, that's fantastic. By the way, do you have a chapter in the UAE or in India?
We have a chapter in Dubai and in India.
Wow, where in India?
I have to check on that. I should know that off the top of my head, but I'll have to check.
Well, I'm going to try and be a part of the September conference in Washington, D.C., because, I do have plans. But yeah, I think this does sound exciting. And I think in B2B, that's a minuscule investment considering, the returns that it can bring you. So it does make total sense.
So fun fact, I did a little digging while we were talking. And in answer to your question, we actually have 92 members in India, spread across quite a few cities, from Mumbai to Karnataka. We have people in Hyderabad and Chennai, Uttar Pradesh, really across the country. So it's been fascinating to watch our membership grow in India, but lots of different pockets of Pavilion membership popping up.
And how many members would you have in Dubai?
In Dubai, I can tell you that really quickly.
Sorry, I threw a live question since you...
No, that's okay. I can actually answer these questions. I love questions that are easy to answer. In Dubai, we have 64 members.
Okay. No, sounds fair. And because we are a company based out of Abu Dhabi now, which is like just next to Dubai, part of UAE, and we spend a lot of time in both these countries. Our tech teams are based out of Delhi NCR, the capital in India. But yeah, I think fantastic. We're going to recommend it to a lot of people, and I think the playbook kind of seems really relevant. Now, what I love about this is the way you merged education with community. And my next question's around the same fact. Like, why do you think education is such an important piece of community, and does that apply to anyone? Because the other community success that we saw on our platform had a very similar playbook of launching the community with courses.
Look, I think it is fairly universal in the sense that the world is changing really quickly. And I've mentioned AI a lot, but it's, you can't ignore it. It's never, as far as I'm aware in history, has the pace of change been so fast. And literally, I feel like I don't know what next month is going to look like, let alone next year. And so in an environment where the pace of change has accelerated that dramatically, the best way, really the only way to learn and keep pace is to rely on a network, right? You can read a lot, you can listen to a lot of podcasts, you can consume newsletters and blogs and do research, but you'll never keep up just doing that because things change so quickly that the only way to really stay on top of it is to test and, especially in go-to-market, use the tools, try to apply these things in your go to market motion. It's a lived experience that is the best teacher, but one individual person can't live all the experiences. It's simply not possible. So what is so powerful about community, both in terms of formal education and the informal peer-led education, is really that in essence, you're tapping into a hive mind of lived experiences at scale. And that really makes learning much faster, more responsive, and agile.
Wow, that's so wonderfully put. The hive mind, you're kind of tapping into it. And I think, yeah, I think that should be the strategy of most of the educational institutions in today's time, because, you know, you go to a Stanford or a Harvard because you want to be a part of that community. I mean, so there is a bit of a thinking of similar sorts there as well. But I think you're right, GTM, the pace of evolution is just unbelievable. I mean, it's something that we've never seen for anything else. So I completely agree with you. Now, do you see AI driven education, like content that's generated by AI for longer courses, not just for like short form content? Do you think that's going to be a part of deployments within community or your content playbook that you have at Pavilion?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are already using AI to learn. There's deep research, LLMs. There's all kinds of ways to turn the traditional educational system on its head. And I'm the parent of an 18-year-old who's about to head off to college, and I'm definitely asking myself, like, is this investment still worth it? Because and I think it is right now, and I think there will always be a situation where it is worth it for certain types of people. But the truth is that for many people who are very self-directed and highly curious, we're living in a world where you can get your own bachelor's or master's degree purely self-directed through your own research. It's all out there and
So
available
true.
to us, whether through AI or through videos on places like YouTube. The information's there. And what AI is doing is simply making it easier to surface in a structured format. You could build a prompt for an AI, for a large language model, and tell it to build you a marketing curriculum that is equivalent to a Harvard undergraduate degree. That's a prompt I could build today. My son, who is, like I said, he's leaving for college already, for his classes, he'll go into LLMs and he'll say, I need to, study for my pre-calculus test. Give me
Yeah.
test prep questions and test me, and like it knows the answers. So we have teachers, tutors, all of it baked into these existing LLM platforms. We just need to understand how to structure the prompts and how to use them, but it's there for the taking. And so I think, back to your question around what will this look like in communities? I think the same truth exists, which is that the knowledge already
Yeah.
exists within communities. Communities are collections of people with different types of expertise. And what LLMs will do is just simply help us to surface that expertise and to structure it in a way that is more
Yeah,
consumable.
makes so much sense. And just on the sidelines, I have an 8-year-old daughter, and we are homeschooling her because I believe, humans have never seen a time like this, and schools have no idea what they're in for. The whole concept
No.
of memory-based learning, which is still the center point of going to a school, with all those subjects that 99% of content you forget anyways. I mean, so she's got a curriculum that we are building along, and there are a lot of experiences that get her to interact with other kids and be friends with and spend time and stuff. But yeah, these are interesting times for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question around the same thing, what we've just discussed about around education. Um, when you think of marketing and communities, now there's a new audience that we've been interacting with a lot, and it's hospitals and healthcare. Um, do you see any possibility, and I know you are a GTM community, but this is a question close to my heart right now, and there are so many ifs and buts that we encountered in a meeting today morning actually. So the question is, do you see a hospital starting a community where it lets its patients talk to each other, help them with post, let's say operative care tips, to medicines that work, to regimes, diets? There is a lot to be shared there. The value is there, but there's also a chance that they're just going to badmouth the hospital in a community that they could not otherwise?
It's a great question, and I am going to give you an answer that is very much driven by my context as a person who lives in the United States, where our tort system is, I'd think, very dysfunctional. So we make it really easy for people to sue
Yeah,
anybody for
yeah.
any reason. For that reason, I can't imagine that happening anytime soon. Certainly not in the United States for a couple of reasons. One, there are such rigid laws around personally identifiable information, especially when it comes to
HIPAA.
healthcare,
Yeah.
that I think hospitals would be very nervous about allowing that to be shared unchecked. Two, I agree with you. I think the liability, they'd be terrified of liability if patients started talking to each other. That being said, I think there's, there are other ways of getting at what you're talking about, which is like, I think you're probably seeing more hospitals lean into formats like forums where they have a little bit more moderation ability, where people can ask questions and other people can see the question and the answer, but the hospital has a way of like policing it a little bit. Who knows what the future holds, but I think those are some like big challenges that stand in the way of healthcare systems using those kinds of approaches.
But you do see a huge advantage as well on the other side. I mean, I know.
Oh yeah. I mean, I will also though say that the other downside, which I didn't mention, already exists with search engines, which is that we think Google is a doctor sometimes, and we put our symptoms in, and then it spits back all these things that are terrifying, and it causes us to leap to conclusions that may or may not be productive. So I think it's a double-edged sword. Like, I believe that we all would benefit from more information and perspectives when it comes to our healthcare? Absolutely. Do I also believe that, doctors are the real experts and we should listen to them and trust them because they've been schooled for many years in what they're doing? And, your next door neighbor or your, fellow mom in your play group is not trained in that way. And I think as a society, in some cases, we've skewed a little bit too far in the direction of listening to friends and neighbors who are not experts over the people who truly are.
Yeah, but
that might be controversial. I might be stirring controversy on this podcast right now.
No, I think it's a great conversation because we're talking to a lot of people in that segment. And there was this interesting thought around the same thing that you just mentioned. So there's been a viral post going around on various WhatsApp groups, and WhatsApp's quite popular in Gulf and India and Asian countries. This post is about a doctor, seemingly a doctor, right? I mean, with a stethoscope and a green-colored uniform, talking about not feeding pigeons because it causes a lung disease that's not treatable easily. Now, hear this. I mean, I studied biotechnology for even my master's. I worked as a scientist before I started my, entrepreneurial journey. So I know this as a matter of fact that a doctor never in his education or in the practicing career has any time to go into the causes of diseases. I mean, they're taught symptoms and treatments, right? That's what the domain is about. I mean, the other domain that finds out why did this happen is microbiology, molecular biology, and no hospital unless it's connected to a research institute, has the time to go to the causes, right? So he's not the right guy talking about this. But because we see a doctor, most of the people believe it's true. And it just goes on to become a fact. Whereas, it shouldn't come from him. So I think that's kind of the downside of the power we believe they hold. And this conversation today was with a doctor who owns 8 hospitals. And he agreed to it. He said, yeah, I mean, we don't know anything about why a disease happened. And I mean, we never taught that. We never study that. We don't read journals as much as we should. So,
Yeah. At the very least, though, as a profession, they have to take the Hippocratic Oath. There are certain ethical requirements. I think, that's the same is not true of all the other people out there who opine on medical care and healthcare. So it's an interesting time we live in, and it's going to be a bigger challenge over time for sure.
Yes, absolutely. But I think what you've just kind of, spoken about the insights and ideas around communities. I think they can be a game changer for so many B2B companies. So, as my last question, what I like to ask my guests is, if you had one piece of advice, like one single advice that you're going to give to a founder that you believe is the most important one, and obviously you've already spoken about personal brand and some of that stuff, so you can't say that again. What's that one piece of advice that you're going to give to someone who's going, let's say not this time 200,000 to 2 million, but 2 million upwards, right? What's that piece of advice?
I think it would be in two parts. The first part would be you really have to absolutely embrace and lean into AI. It is it is here, it is staying, it is the time is now. The time was actually a few months ago to lean in, but it's not too late. But it soon will be too late if you haven't leaned in, and you will fall behind your competitors. There is an opportunity at the moment to really accelerate your growth and understanding by improving your fluency around AI. So that's part one. Part two is that because of everything happening with AI, you also really need to take seriously the need to invest in your brand and to take a longer term perspective over what success looks like from marketing. I think for many years, we've had CEOs, founders, investors who've been very focused on short term growth and results. And yes, that's important, but we're moving increasingly in a direction where that is going to get harder and harder and more expensive if you're not willing to make investments in brand. And I think we're seeing this conversation surface more and more across the marketing world, and it's time to truly take it seriously.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That's been fantastic. And thank you so much for being so candid, upfront, and, sharing everything without holding back. It's truly been a pleasure and an honor. Like I said, so much to learn. But yeah, I think exciting time for you personally, because your son's kind of leaving. So when is exactly the date?
August 15th is when I become an empty nester. So it's
Oh,
going to be a big change in my life.
only you have one son, or?
He's my youngest,
Ah, okay. How many kids do you have?
4.
Oh wow. Yeah. We just have one daughter, and we feel like we should have planned for many more kids. It's yes. So
Yeah, it goes by fast. Enjoy every moment of it.
absolutely. No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for, and all the best for him, for his career, and
Thank
it's
you.
been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen.